Dr. Elena Vasquez had treated plasma burns, radiation poisoning, and exotic parasites that defied classification in 3 different xenobiology textbooks, but she'd never encountered a patient who wore their medical emergency as a second skin. Princess Zara Stellarum of the Valkorian Empire lay on the bio bed in Medical Bay 3, her bio-integrated armor still sealed despite the obvious coolant leaks that were slowly poisoning her system with each labored breath. "Your Highness," Elena said carefully, consulting her medical scanner while trying not to appear threatening to someone whose culture interpreted medical vulnerability as potential weakness, "the armor's coolant system has been compromised. If we don't remove it soon, the toxicity levels will cause permanent neural damage." Princess Zara's response came through the armor's vocal synthesizers, her natural voice filtered through technology that made her sound more like a weapons system than a person. "Human physician, Valkorian bioarmor cannot be removed by alien hands. The integration protocols will reject your interference." Elena studied her medical readings with the growing frustration of someone who understood the problem perfectly but was being prevented from solving it by cultural barriers that made zero sense from a medical perspective. The princess's armor was a masterwork of Valkorian military engineering, flowing curves of biometal that responded to neural commands and provided both protection and enhanced physical capabilities. It was also currently killing its wearer with toxic coolant that should have been filtered by systems damaged in whatever battle had brought her to the human diplomatic vessel. "Your Highness, with respect, your integration protocols appear to be malfunctioning along with your coolant systems," Elena said, activating her diplomatic training to keep her voice calm and professional. "I'm certified in Valkorian physiology and bioarmor technology. The removal process is complex, but not impossible." "You misunderstand the nature of the barrier, human," Princess Zara said, though Elena caught a slight tremor in the synthesized voice that suggested pain was becoming difficult to hide. "Bioarmor removal requires either automated medical systems calibrated to individual neural patterns, or—" She paused, the armor's vocal processors creating static that might have been hesitation. "Or what?" Elena asked, pulling up additional technical specifications on her medical display. "Or the intimate knowledge possessed by a bonded partner," the princess finished quietly. In Valkorian culture, armor removal by another person represents the ultimate expression of trust and vulnerability. Elena felt her medical training collide with anthropological fascination as she processed this information. "So you're telling me that your armor can only be removed by machines or by someone you're romantically involved with? That is, an oversimplification, but essentially accurate. And I'm guessing you don't have either of those options currently available," Elena said, watching her patient's vital signs continue their slow but steady decline. "Valkorian warriors do not form bonded partnerships that might compromise their political utility," Princess Zara said with the mechanical precision of someone reciting military doctrine. "And the automated systems aboard this vessel are not compatible with our technology." Elena set down her medical scanner and studied her patient with the clinical attention she usually reserved for complex surgical procedures. Princess Zara's armor showed evidence of recent combat, plasma scoring across the chest plates, impact damage along the left arm, and what appeared to be deliberate targeting of the coolant regulation systems. Someone had tried very hard to kill the princess in a way that would look like equipment failure rather than assassination. "Your Highness," Elena said carefully, "what if I told you that I could remove your armor safely, but it would require you to trust me with the kind of vulnerability your culture reserves for intimate partners?" The static from the armor's vocal processors suggested rapid processing of an impossible decision. "You are asking me to violate fundamental cultural protocols." "I'm asking you to let me save your life," Elena corrected. "Everything else is just details we can work through as we go." Princess Zara was silent for long enough that Elena began to worry the toxicity levels had affected her cognitive functions. When she finally spoke, her voice carried undertones that the vocal synthesizers couldn't entirely mask. "Dr. Vasquez, I have been trained since childhood to view vulnerability as weakness and independence as strength. The idea of allowing another person, especially an alien, to see me without my armor is—" She paused, searching for words that could bridge the gap between cultures. It is comparable to your concept of standing naked in a public square while announcing your deepest fears to strangers. Elena pulled up a chair beside the bio-bed, settling in with the patience she'd learned from years of treating patients whose conditions required both medical skill and psychological support. Your Highness, in human medicine, we have a concept called informed consent. It means that patients have the right to understand their options and make their own decisions about treatment, even when those decisions go against cultural norms or personal comfort. Explain. Your options are: keep the armor on and suffer progressive neural damage that will likely result in death within the next 6 hours, or allow me to remove it safely and preserve both your life and your cognitive function. Elena gestured to her medical displays, which showed clear projections of toxicity progression. I can't make that choice for you, but I can promise that if you choose the armor removal, I'll treat you with the same respect and care I'd want for myself in a similar situation. The princess's armor shifted slightly as she turned her head to look directly at Elena. Through the helmet's transparent faceplate, Elena caught a glimpse of amber eyes that seemed far too young for someone carrying the political weight of an entire empire's diplomatic relations. You have experience with Valkorian bioarmor removal? Princess Zara asked. I have experience with complex medical procedures that require patient trust and careful attention to both physical and emotional comfort, Elena replied honestly. The technical aspects I can learn as we go. The important part is that you feel safe and respected throughout the process. Safe, the princess repeated, as if testing an unfamiliar concept. Dr. Vasquez, I have not felt safe since I was old enough to understand that my value to my people depended on my ability to represent strength they could never show themselves. Elena felt her heart contract with sympathy for someone who'd been forced to carry impossible burdens while still young enough that in human society, she'd be finishing her education rather than negotiating treaties between civilizations. Your Highness, would it help if I explained exactly what the removal process would involve? You'd maintain complete control. I wouldn't proceed with any step unless you gave explicit permission. Princess Zara's vital signs fluctuated on Elena's monitors as she processed the offer. Very well, Dr. Vasquez. Explain your proposed treatment protocol. Elena activated her holographic display, showing the armor's technical specifications alongside Valkorian anatomical data. The bioarmor has integration points at major nerve clusters. Base of the skull, spine, major joint articulations. Each connection point has both mechanical and bioelectric locks that respond to neural commands from the wearer. Correct. The integration allows for enhanced reflexes and strength amplification. But it also means that removal requires careful disconnection in a specific sequence to avoid neural feedback, Elena continued. Each disconnection point will cause temporary discomfort as the bioelectric interface disengages, but I can provide pain management options that won't interfere with the process. Pain management? Princess Zara asked, her synthesized voice carrying what might have been confusion. Medications or techniques to reduce discomfort during the procedure, Elena explained, then realized she might have encountered another cultural barrier. Do Valkorian medical practices not include pain relief during treatment? Pain is considered instructive. A reminder of the cost of weakness or poor judgment. Elena took a deep breath and reminded herself that cultural sensitivity was part of good medical practice, even when cultural practices seemed designed to maximize suffering. Your Highness, I'd like to suggest that pain relief during medical treatment isn't about avoiding consequences, but about allowing your body to heal more effectively. Reduced stress response actually improves recovery times. This is a human medical philosophy. It's a philosophy based on treating patients as whole beings whose comfort and dignity matter as much as their physical repair, Elena said. If you're willing to try a different approach, I think you might be surprised by how much easier healing can be when you're not fighting pain at the same time. Princess Zara was quiet for so long that Elena began to worry she'd pushed too hard against cultural boundaries. When the response came, it was barely audible through the vocal synthesizers. Dar. Vasquez, if I agree to this procedure, will you promise me something? What do you need? Promise me that you will not think less of me if I am not as strong as my armor makes me appear. Elena felt tears threaten as she recognized the vulnerability behind the request. Your Highness, I promise that I will see exactly what I see in every patient, someone brave enough to trust a stranger with their safety, someone strong enough to choose healing over pride, and someone deserving of the gentlest care I can provide. The armor's life support systems hummed quietly as Princess Zara made a decision that went against every lesson her culture had taught her about strength, weakness, and the dangers of trusting aliens with Valkorian secrets. Very well, Dr. Vasquez. Begin the removal procedure. And please, call me Zara. The first armor connection point was located at the base of Princess Zara's skull, hidden beneath intricate biometal plating that seemed to flow like liquid mercury when Elena's scanner approached it. Elena had studied the technical specifications for hours, but seeing the integration points in person was like discovering that theoretical physics had learned to become jewelry. Zara, Elena said softly, I'm going to need you to manually override the helmet's lock sequence. The neural interface should respond to your conscious command to disengage. The process will be uncomfortable, Zara warned, her synthesized voice carrying undertones that suggested she was preparing for something significantly worse than uncomfortable. I understand, Elena replied, positioning her medical scanner to monitor neural activity during the disconnection. Remember, you control the pace. If you need to stop at any point, just tell me. The armor's vocal processors transmitted what sounded like a deep breath, though Elena wasn't sure if it was actually breathing or simply the sound of internal systems cycling. Beginning neural disconnect sequence. The change was immediate and dramatic. Princess Zara's entire body went rigid as bioelectric feedback coursed through the armor's integration network, and Elena's medical monitors exploded with readings that suggested someone had just rewired her patient's nervous system while it was still running. Zara. Elena moved closer, her hands hovering near the princess without quite touching, unsure whether contact would help or make the neural feedback worse. Are you okay? Do you need me to stop? No, came the strained response, though the vocal synthesizers couldn't hide the pain in her voice. Continue. The process must be completed in sequence. Elena watched her monitors as the first connection point slowly disengaged, neural activity gradually normalizing as the bioarmor released its grip on Zara's nervous system. When the helmet finally separated with a soft pneumatic hiss, Elena got her first look at her patient's actual face. Princess Zara was younger than Elena had expected, perhaps 25 standard years, with the kind of severe beauty that suggested someone who'd been taught to see their appearance as another tool of diplomacy rather than personal expression. Her dark hair was damp with perspiration from the disconnection process, and her amber eyes held a mixture of pain and something that might have been relief. How do you feel? Elena asked, offering Zara a cloth to wipe away the perspiration. Strange, Zara said, her natural voice softer and more musical than the synthesized version Elena had been hearing. I can feel air moving against my skin. The armor's atmospheric regulators eliminate such sensations. Is that uncomfortable? No, Zara said wonderingly, touching her own face as if testing whether it was real. It's pleasant. I had forgotten that such feelings existed. Elena smiled, then moved to examine the next integration point along Zara's shoulder assembly. How long have you been in continuous armor integration? Approximately 8 years, Zara replied, watching Elena's movements with the intense focus of someone learning to trust a process they didn't understand. Since I completed warrior training and assumed diplomatic responsibilities. 8 years without removing it? Elena asked, unable to hide her surprise. That explains the extensive neural pathway development I'm seeing on the scans. Is that problematic? Not problematic, exactly, but it means your nervous system has adapted to constant bioarmor interface. Each disconnection is going to be more intense than it would be for someone with less integration time. Elena paused in her examination to meet Zara's eyes. Are you sure you want to continue? We could try a gradual disconnection over several days. Dr. Vasquez, Elena, the coolant toxicity will not allow for gradual removal, Zara said, then added quietly, Besides, I find myself curious about what my body feels like without mechanical enhancement. Elena began working on the shoulder connection points, her movements deliberately slow and careful as she monitored Zara's responses to each adjustment. Tell me about Valkyrian warrior training. What was it like growing up knowing you'd spend most of your adult life in bioarmor? Efficient, Zara said, though something in her tone suggested the word carried meanings Elena hadn't considered. Children who show aptitude for warrior diplomat roles begin integration training at age 12. Physical conditioning, neural adaptation exercises, psychological preparation for long-term isolation within armor systems. Isolation. Bioarmor creates a barrier between the wearer and external stimuli. Enhanced protection requires reduced sensitivity to environment, touch, even pain. Zara winced as Elena disconnected another neural interface. Warriors learn to function without the complications of physical sensation. Elena felt a chill that had nothing to do with the medical bay's temperature control. Zara, are you telling me that your armor deliberately reduces your ability to feel physical contact? Among other things. Emotional regulation, pain suppression, elimination of distracting environmental factors. Zara paused as Elena worked on a particularly complex connection point. The integration is designed to create perfect soldiers who cannot be compromised by physical or emotional weaknesses. That's not creating perfect soldiers, Elena said, her voice carrying more anger than she'd intended. That's creating people who've been deliberately disconnected from their own humanity. Or I suppose, their own Valkyrian nature. You disapprove of our military efficiency protocols? Elena stopped working and looked directly at Zara, wanting to make sure her words carried their full meaning. I disapprove of any system that treats a person's capacity for feeling, physical or emotional, as a weakness to be eliminated rather than a strength to be respected. Zara was quiet for a moment, processing this perspective. In human culture, emotional sensitivity is considered valuable. Essential, Elena said firmly. The ability to feel, to empathize, to respond to physical and emotional stimuli, these aren't complications or weaknesses. They're what make life worth living. But surely they compromise tactical effectiveness. Maybe, Elena admitted, returning to her work on the armor connections. But they also enable cooperation, creativity, love, artistic expression, and a kind of deep satisfaction that comes from helping others. I'd rather be tactically compromised and fully alive than perfectly efficient and emotionally dead. As Elena spoke, she noticed that Zara was responding more strongly to each touch, not just the medical procedures, but incidental contact as Elena positioned her hands or adjusted equipment. The princess seemed fascinated by sensations that Elena took for granted. The disconnection process is affecting your sensory perception, Elena observed. Are you experiencing increased sensitivity? Yes, Zara said wonderingly. When you touch my arm to steady yourself, I can feel the warmth of your hand through the medical gloves. The armor would have filtered such information as irrelevant data. How does it feel to experience that kind of sensation again? Overwhelming, Zara admitted. But also, beautiful. I had forgotten that contact with another person could feel like anything other than potential threat assessment. Elena worked in comfortable silence for several minutes, focusing on the complex biomechanical connections that integrated the armor with Zara's muscular and skeletal systems. Each disconnection required careful timing and precise pressure to avoid damaging the neural pathways that had grown to accommodate the foreign technology. Elena, Zara said quietly, may I ask you something personal? Of course. When you touch another person, not for medical purposes, but for personal connection, what does that feel like? Elena paused in her work, considering how to explain something so fundamental that she'd never thought to analyze it. It depends on the context and the person. Comforting touch feels warm and safe. Romantic touch can feel electric, exciting, tender. Even casual friendly touch can feel reassuring, connecting. These are positive experiences. Usually, yes. Physical contact is one of the primary ways humans express care, affection, comfort, love. Elena glanced at Zara's face, noting the intense concentration with which she was processing this information. Have you never experienced touch as something positive? Touch has always been associated with either medical procedures or combat training, Zara said. Both contexts involve discomfort or pain that must be endured without emotional response. Elena felt her heart break a little as she realized the extent of what Valkorian culture had taken from their warriors. Zara, when this procedure is finished, if you're interested, I could show you what positive touch feels like. Nothing medical or professional, just the kind of contact that humans use to express friendship and care. You would do that? I'd be honored to, Elena said sincerely. Everyone deserves to know what it feels like to be touched with kindness. As they continued the armor removal process, Elena noticed that Zara was beginning to relax in ways that went beyond simple muscle tension. Her breathing became deeper and more natural, her responses to Elena's movements showed increasing trust, and her questions shifted from technical concerns to curiosity about human experiences she'd never been allowed to have. We're almost finished with the major integration points, Elena announced, examining her scanner readings. The final connections are along your spine and the base integration unit. Those will be the most intense disconnections. I understand, Zara said, then added hesitantly, Elena, when the process is complete, will you stay with me for a while? I suspect that experiencing my body without bioarmor enhancement will be disorienting. Of course, Elena replied. For as long as you need. Thank you, Zara said softly. I am beginning to understand why humans place such value on gentle care. It feels quite different from anything I was taught to expect. The final armor connections required Elena to help Zara sit forward while she worked on the spinal integration points, a process that brought them into closer physical proximity than any previous part of the procedure. Elena could feel the tension in Zara's muscles as she prepared for what they both knew would be the most difficult part of the disconnection sequence. Remember, Elena said softly, positioning her hands near the complex biomechanical interface at the base of Zara's spine, you're in control of the pace. If the neural feedback becomes too intense, we can pause and manage the pain before continuing. Pain management, Zara repeated, as if testing the concept. Elena, in my culture, requesting relief from discomfort is considered admission of inadequate mental conditioning. In my culture, Elena replied, ignoring someone's pain when you have the ability to relieve it is considered medical malpractice. She activated her scanner to monitor the spinal integration points. Besides, courage isn't the absence of pain, it's the decision to do what's necessary despite the pain. Asking for help when you need it actually takes more strength than suffering in silence. Zara was quiet for a moment, processing this radically different perspective on strength and vulnerability. You have a gift for reframing concepts that challenge my assumptions about proper behavior. I have a gift for recognizing that different cultures define strength in different ways, Elena corrected gently. Your willingness to trust me with this procedure, to let me see you without your armor, to ask questions about experiences your culture discouraged, that takes tremendous courage. Elena began the disconnection sequence for the first spinal integration point, watching her monitors carefully as bioelectric feedback cascaded through Zara's nervous system. The princess went rigid, her hands clenching into fists as neural pathways that had been modified for years suddenly reverted to their original configurations. Breathe, Elena said quietly, placing one hand on Zara's shoulder in a gesture of support. Try to relax into the sensation rather than fighting it. I don't know how, Zara said through gritted teeth. My training teaches resistance to overwhelming stimuli. Then let me teach you something different, Elena said. Focus on my voice, on the warmth of my hand on your shoulder. The pain is temporary, it's your nervous system remembering how to function without artificial enhancement. You're not fighting an enemy, you're reconnecting with yourself. As Elena spoke, she maintained gentle contact with Zara's shoulder, providing a stable point of reference while the princess's sensory system recalibrated. Gradually, Zara's breathing deepened and her muscle tension decreased. Better? Elena asked. Yes, Zara said wonderingly. The sensation is still intense, but it feels less like damage and more like. She searched for words. Like awakening from a long sleep. That's exactly what it is, Elena said, moving to the next integration point. Your nervous system is remembering sensations it was trained to ignore. The second spinal disconnection proceeded more smoothly, with Zara applying the relaxation techniques Elena had shown her. As each connection point disengaged, Elena could see visible changes in her patient, more natural movement, increased responsiveness to environmental stimuli, and something that looked like wonder as Zara rediscovered her own physical existence. The base integration unit is the final connection, Elena announced, examining the complex biomechanical interface that linked the armor's power systems to Zara's cardiovascular and nervous systems. This one will be the most intense, but also the most liberating. Elena, Zara said, turning to meet her eyes, before we proceed, I want to thank you for treating me with such care. I am beginning to understand that what you call gentle treatment is not about weakness or indulgence, it's about respect for the person receiving care. You're welcome, Elena said, touched by the gratitude in Zara's voice. Everyone deserves to be treated with dignity and compassion, especially when they're vulnerable. In Valkorian culture, vulnerability is something to be hidden or eliminated. But you seem to view it as something to be protected and honored. Vulnerability is just another word for being human, Elena said. Or in your case, being Valkorian. It's not a flaw to be fixed, it's an essential part of what makes life meaningful. Elena positioned her hands around the base integration unit, noting how the biomechanical interface had grown into Zara's physiology over years of continuous connection. Are you ready for the final disconnection? Yes, Zara said, then added quietly, Elena, when this is finished, when I'm no longer connected to the armor, will you show me what it feels like to be touched with kindness? Not medical contact, but the sort of touch you described, touch that expresses care and friendship. I'd be honored to, Elena said, beginning the complex sequence that would free Zara from the final armor connection. Just remember to breathe through the intensity. The final disconnection was like watching someone emerge from chrysalis, painful, transformative, and ultimately beautiful. As the biomechanical interface released its hold on Zara's nervous system, years of suppressed sensory input flooded back in a cascade of rediscovered sensation. Zara cried out as the disconnection completed, her body trembling as neural pathways reorganized themselves and her consciousness expanded to include sensations she'd forgotten existed. Elena immediately moved to support her, providing both physical stability and emotional reassurance as Zara adjusted to unfiltered sensory experience. It's overwhelming, Zara gasped, clinging to Elena's arms as if they were anchors in a storm of sensation. I can feel everything, the air moving against my skin, the texture of the medical gown, the warmth of your hands. How do you function with such intense input? You learn to process it gradually, Elena said softly, maintaining steady contact as Zara's nervous system calibrated to its new freedom. Right now everything feels intense because you're experiencing it all at once after years of suppression. It will become more manageable as your brain adapts. I can feel your pulse through your hands, Zara said with amazement. And the warmth where you're touching me feels different from the ambient temperature. These distinctions were filtered out by the armor. Elena helped Zara settle back against the biobed support systems, then began a gentle medical examination to assess how the armor removal had affected her physiology. What she found was both encouraging and heartbreaking. Zara's body was healthy and strong, but bore evidence of years spent disconnected from normal sensory experience. Your muscle tension is already decreasing, Elena observed, running her scanner over Zara's shoulders and back. The armor kept your body in a constant state of readiness that required significant energy expenditure. I feel lighter, Zara said. Not just physically, but emotionally. As if I've been carrying weights I didn't realize were there. May I? Elena asked, gesturing toward Zara's hand. When Zara nodded, Elena took her hand gently, intertwining their fingers in the simple contact she'd promised to demonstrate. Zara's reaction was immediate and profound, her eyes widened with surprise, then softened with something that looked like wonder. This is touch for connection, Elena explained quietly. Not medical, not military, just human, or in this case, interspecies, contact that says, you're not alone, you're cared for, you're safe. It feels. Zara struggled for words, her free hand touching her face as if confirming her own existence. It feels like something I didn't know I was missing. Like a form of communication that bypasses language entirely. That's exactly what it is, Elena said, maintaining the gentle contact while monitoring Zara's vital signs. Physical affection is one of the ways sentient beings express care and build emotional bonds. They sat together in comfortable silence, Elena providing the patient contact that allowed Zara to process her first experience of truly gentle touch. Through the medical bay's viewports, the stars of deep space sparkled with the kind of beauty that could only be fully appreciated by someone who'd learned to see the universe without filters. Elena, Zara said eventually, I need to tell you something about why I'm here, why my armor was damaged. You don't have to explain anything you're not ready to discuss, Elena said. But I do, Zara insisted, her voice carrying new strength that came from connection rather than isolation. The attack on my armor wasn't random combat damage. Members of my own military council orchestrated the assassination attempt because they believed my peace negotiations with humanity represented betrayal of Valkorian warrior values. Elena felt her stomach drop as she realized the implications. Zara, if your own people are trying to kill you for pursuing peace, then returning you to Valkorian space would likely result in my death, Zara finished quietly. Which means I need to decide whether I'm willing to request asylum with humanity, knowing that such a choice would make me a traitor to my birth culture but might allow me to live as the person I'm discovering I actually am. Elena squeezed Zara's hand gently, offering support for an impossible decision. Whatever you choose, you won't face it alone. I promise you that. Thank you, Zara said, then smiled, the first completely unguarded expression Elena had seen from her. For everything. For treating me gently, for showing me that vulnerability can coexist with strength, for helping me remember what it feels like to be a person rather than a weapon. Thank you for trusting me with your safety, Elena replied. And for teaching me that courage comes in many forms, including the willingness to let someone care for you. Outside the medical bay, the diplomatic crisis continued to unfold, but inside the quiet space they'd created together, two people from different worlds discovered that healing, both physical and emotional, could transcend the boundaries that their cultures had tried to build between them. The crisis alert that shattered the peaceful atmosphere of Medical Bay 3 arrived with the subtle diplomacy of a plasma torpedo through the ship's main viewport. Elena's communication console erupted with incoming messages, emergency broadcasts, and what appeared to be a formal diplomatic ultimatum written in the flowery language that civilizations used when they were being polite about threatening war. Dr. Vasquez, came Captain Rivera's voice over the intercom, please report to the bridge immediately. We have a situation involving Princess Zara's legal status that requires your medical expertise. Elena looked at Zara, who had gone very still in the way of someone who just heard their own death sentence announced with military efficiency. That would be the Valkorian response to my disappearance, Zara said quietly. They've likely declared me either dead or treasonous, both of which would justify extreme measures to recover my body or eliminate the evidence. Stay here, Elena said, moving toward the communication console. Let me find out what we're dealing with before we make any decisions. Elena, wait, Zara called, her voice carrying the kind of urgency that made Elena stop immediately. Before you leave, I need to tell you something important. Elena returned to Zara's side, noting how different her patient looked without the armor, younger, more vulnerable, but also somehow more present and real. What is it? In the past 3 hours, you've shown me more genuine care and respect than I experienced in 8 years of military service, Zara said, reaching for Elena's hand with the newfound appreciation for physical contact that armor removal had made possible. You've helped me remember what it feels like to be a person rather than a weapon. If the diplomatic situation requires me to choose between returning to Valkorian space and requesting asylum with humanity, I want you to know that the choice isn't really about politics or military allegiances. What is it about? It's about choosing between a culture that taught me to see vulnerability as weakness, and the possibility of learning what it means to live among people who treat vulnerability as something precious to be protected, Zara said, her amber eyes holding Elena's with an intensity that made the medical bay feel smaller and more intimate. It's about choosing between isolation and connection. Elena felt her heart perform gymnastics that probably violated several laws of cardiovascular physiology. Zara, are you saying what I think you're saying? I'm saying that what happened between us during the armor removal wasn't just medical procedure, Zara said softly. For me, it was the first time anyone had ever touched me with genuine tenderness. The first time someone had cared more about my comfort than my utility. The first time I felt like a person worthy of gentle treatment. Before Elena could respond, her communication console chimed with another urgent message. This one marked with the priority indicators that meant, drop everything and handle this immediately or watch interstellar relations collapse in real time. I have to answer that, Elena said reluctantly. I know, Zara replied. But Elena, when you do, please remember that I'm not just a diplomatic problem to be solved. I'm someone who's finally learned what it feels like to be cared for, and I'm not sure I can go back to being a weapon after experiencing what it means to be a person. Elena squeezed Zara's hand gently, then activated her communication link to the bridge. Dr. Vasquez reporting, Captain. Elena, we've got Valkorian warships at the system perimeter demanding immediate return of Princess Zara. Captain Rivera's voice carried the controlled tension of someone managing a crisis that could escalate to violence with very little provocation. They're claiming she was kidnapped during a rescue operation, and they want her transferred to their custody within 6 hours. What's the diplomatic position? Elena asked, though she suspected she knew the answer. Officially, we have to comply unless Princess Zara formally requests asylum, Rivera replied. Unofficially, our intelligence sources indicate that she's been declared a traitor by her own military council, and returning her to Valkorian custody would likely result in her execution. Elena looked at Zara, who was listening to the conversation with the calm expression of someone who'd already made peace with impossible choices. Captain, what are the implications if she does request asylum? Best case scenario. We create a diplomatic incident that takes months to resolve and results in strained relations between humanity and the Valkorian Empire, Rivera said. Worst case scenario, we accidentally start a war because the Valkorians interpret harboring their princess as an act of aggression. And if we return her? Then we send someone to their death to avoid political complications, Rivera said bluntly. Elena, I need your medical assessment. Is Princess Zara physically and mentally capable of making an informed decision about asylum, or is she compromised by her injuries? Elena looked at Zara, who nodded with the quiet determination of someone who'd found something worth fighting for. Captain, Princess Zara is fully capable of making informed decisions about her own future. The armor removal was successful, and she's experiencing no cognitive impairment. Then I need to speak with her directly, Rivera said. Dr. Vasquez, please escort Princess Zara to conference room 2. We'll handle this properly, through official channels. Understood, Captain. Elena deactivated the communication link and turned to find Zara already standing, testing her balance without the mechanical assistance she'd relied on for years. How do you feel about walking without armor support? Uncertain but determined, Zara replied, taking a few experimental steps. My balance is different, my muscle memory needs recalibration, but I feel more connected to my own body than I have in years. They made their way through the ship's corridors slowly, Elena providing physical support when needed while Zara adjusted to moving without technological enhancement. Other crew members they passed looked at the princess with curiosity. Few humans had ever seen a Valkorian outside of full military armor. Elena, Zara said as they approached the conference room, whatever happens in this meeting, I want you to know that you've given me something I didn't know existed. What's that? Hope that there are people in the universe who see strength and vulnerability as compatible rather than contradictory, Zara said. Hope that being cared for doesn't have to mean being owned or controlled. Conference room 2 contained Captain Rivera, the ship's diplomatic officer, and several other senior staff members who managed to maintain professional composure despite the historic nature of what they were witnessing. Princess Zara, the first Valkorian royal ever to appear before humans without armor, sat with the quiet dignity of someone who'd chosen authenticity over safety. "Your Highness," Captain Rivera began formally, "you understand the situation regarding your return to Valkorian space. I understand that my own military council has declared me a traitor for pursuing peace with humanity," Zara replied calmly. "I understand that returning to Valkorian custody would likely result in my execution for violating warrior cultural protocols. Given those circumstances, do you wish to request political asylum with the United Earth Coalition?" Zara was quiet for a moment, her hand resting on the table near where Elena sat. When she spoke, her voice carried the strength that came from choosing one's own path rather than following predetermined expectations. "Captain Rivera, I formally request political asylum with humanity. Not because I reject my Valkorian heritage, but because I choose to preserve the parts of myself that my birth culture would eliminate. I choose connection over isolation, growth over stagnation, and the possibility of love over the certainty of being used as a weapon. Your Highness, you understand that this decision will likely result in permanent exile from Valkorian space. I understand that this decision will allow me to discover who I am when I'm not being forced to be what others need me to be," Zara replied. Dar. Vasquez has shown me that strength can coexist with gentleness, that vulnerability can be a form of courage, and that being cared for is not the same as being controlled. Captain Rivera looked around the table at her senior staff, then back at Zara. "Very well, Your Highness. On behalf of the United Earth Coalition, I formally grant you political asylum. Dr. Vasquez, you'll serve as Princess Zara's medical and cultural liaison as she adjusts to life among human communities." 6 months later, the joint medical facilities at Kepler Station buzzed with the controlled chaos of interspecies cooperation at its finest. Elena worked alongside Valkorian healers who had followed Princess Zara into exile, developing new treatment protocols that combined the efficiency of Valkorian biomedicine with the compassionate care standards that Elena had introduced. "Dr. Vasquez," came a familiar voice behind her, "do you have a moment to review the latest bioarmor modification proposals?" Elena turned to find Zara approaching with a data pad filled with technical specifications for armor systems redesigned to enhance rather than suppress the wearer's sensory experience. The former princess had become an ambassador between cultures, helping other Valkorian warriors discover that strength and sensitivity could coexist. "How many requests this week?" Elena asked, reviewing the proposals for warriors who wanted to experience armor removal and the restored sensory connection it provided. 47, Zara replied, settling into the chair beside Elena's workstation. "It seems that word is spreading through Valkorian military networks about alternative approaches to warrior conditioning." Elena smiled, watching through the medical bay's viewport as former enemies worked together to build something neither culture could have achieved alone. "Any regrets about your choice?" "Only one," Zara said, reaching for Elena's hand with the easy affection that had grown between them over months of building a life together. "I regret that it took a medical emergency for me to discover what it feels like to be touched with genuine care." "Well," Elena said, intertwining their fingers, "we have plenty of time to make up for that oversight." Outside their window, the stars of deep space sparkled with the kind of beauty that could only be fully appreciated by someone who'd learned to experience the universe without filters, someone who discovered that the most important armor removal was the willingness to let another person see your heart without protection. And in the quiet moments between medical procedures and diplomatic breakthroughs, Elena and Zara continued to explore what it meant to care for someone gently, to be vulnerable without fear, and to build love on the foundation of respect that transcended the boundaries their cultures had tried to build between them. "No one's ever undressed me gently," Zara had said that first day, speaking about armor but meaning so much more. Now, months later, she understood that being undressed gently, emotionally, culturally, spiritually, was not about weakness or surrender, but about trusting someone enough to show them who you really were beneath all the protection you thought you needed.